So generally speaking, there's two sort of different methods to engagement scoring. And just generally, engagement scoring is just attributing value to a certain interaction, and different interactions will always be will always differ in value, and that's normally defined by you in the business and what you think is most valuable and what you think is less valuable. So the first method is more of an absolute approach, which is just assigning a score to a particular interaction. So, for example, you might have an email opening, for instance, you might score that 5 points. You might have event attendance, you might score that 10 points. Someone might do a piece of CPD, you might give that 25 points. Or you might have someone who's actually speaking at an event, and for that you might give a score of 75 or something like that. So it really varies, and you can define that completely. With this absolute approach, as you can see on the right underneath in the engagement tab, you'll see that there's a little chart which is giving you a sum of the score. So that all that's doing is just adding up all the interactions that you've assigned scoring to, and then giving you one general score. This is a relatively simple way of maybe starting out, or a simple way of doing engagement scoring, but some of the cons of doing this, or the major con of doing this, is your score is always going to be changing because it is a sum. So if you were to segment on top of this and you wanted to place individuals into particular categories of engagement, those categories will always have to change. Score's always going to increase. So your categories are not going to be consistent. So it's a moving target, effectively. The other more complex or more well-rounded approaches is to use percentile scores. And that's effectively a similar sort of concept where you have a weighting that's attributed to the different interactions that the individual is having with you. However, we condense those interactions into a score out of 100. So what you end up with is one score out of 100. And this makes it a lot easier for you to produce categories of engagement that you can slot these individuals into. So on the screen before, you saw that percentile against an individual, and on this screen here, you're seeing your categories as a general dashboard. So an overall view of the engagement that all of your members or donors are having with you, and they're placed into engagement categories. As you can see, you might have like a user or a participant, a connector, a contributor, a leader. So you can see what proportion of your audience is highly engaged, what proportion is somewhat engaged, and what proportion is not very engaged. And then what you can do with this information is store it against the individuals. Like, for instance, here you can see there's an at-risk category and a highly engaged category. This is information that you can store against your individual contacts or individuals within your database. And what you can do with that, if your systems are connected, is push that information into your marketing tools. Like, for instance, you might have an email marketing tool. And when you push that information in, you can actually use that to target your marketing a little bit more effectively. So your entire engagement segmenting is actually carried out within the CRM. And like I say, because in an ideal world, all your data is coming into the CRM, the score it's a much richer, more valuable score, because it's based on criteria that you define and that you've weighted based on the interactions that you think are the most valuable or require scoring. Yeah, so in terms of how we've done it, we have, as an example, developed a tool called Scorez, which works on this percentile method. And what it allows you to do is to query any data that you want, and then assign it a weighting that you've defined. Again, I'll mention that the weighting will differ because all of the digital touch points are not equal. So you might weigh something more heavier than something else. For instance, like attending an event might be more heavily weighted to just maybe a website click or something like that to a specific page on your website. All this contributes to percentile score for the individual or organization. So it just condenses it all down, all the interactions down to a score out of 100. And then from there, you can create your segments and your categories of engagement. And as I mentioned, all of this information, you can view it as a more general, at an organizational level, and at the more granular individual level as well. And like I say, all this information, because it sits in your CRM, you can move it around to different places. Like let's say, for instance, if you're using Dotdigital, you can merge this information into Dotdigital and then use that when you're creating your lists or segments and things like that. Equally, they work quite well together, so you can go from Dotdigital to CRM as well to add to the weighting and things like that.